Pacita project, you know everything about it. You were one of the founders. The aim of the Pacita project is to spread the TA movement to other countries, to new countries. Not only Europe, but also the rest of the world, as Lars put it. Why should countries establish a TA?
Yeah, it's a good question, because sometimes it can look like it's sort of either just that we want to go off and visit nice countries, or that it's a sort of TA imperialism. But I think the answer is pretty clear. I mean, if TA has a value in a country like Norway or Britain, then presumably there is some merit to adopting similar procedures in a country like Nigeria or Philippines, or examples of countries that are thinking about it, Chile, Japan, obviously, Korea's quite. And I mean, I'd say in some of those countries, particularly the ones who are in early stages of development, probably even more relevant. Different technologies are going to be critically important. I mean, food technologies, energy technologies, water management technologies, and so on, are going to be critically important for their future development. And so, in some ways, they've got a greater need, I think, for an organisation that can inform their policymakers than, say, we have in Britain or Germany or Norway, maybe. I'd even go and argue that far.
Well, there are so many issues that come before Congress or come before parliaments that we don't have the opportunity to study in depth. And so certainly having some good scientific background, which is not always the background of members of Congress or parliamentarians, is very helpful in trying to make decisions.
And the technology assessments do one principal thing, and that is actually make politicians aware of the technologies, of the science, and in fact communicate it to them in a format that is understandable. So that's the first thing. I think secondly, what you actually get is if you have technology assessment organisations or institutes in different parliaments, they actually share their experiences. So they actually, I know that in the UK, we often rely on work in Holland or in Spain or in Italy for us to feed in to work we're actually doing on a particular piece of assessment for our parliamentarians. So I think that's the second thing. I think the third thing is that increasingly we are using those technology assessments through the web to be able to communicate to a much wider audience. And there is a sort of a rigor about them and an understanding about them and an accessibility about them which gives people that sort of confidence in their content. So for those three reasons, Europe is relatively small, but to have that organisation at your disposal and to be able to share that information means that TA is absolutely crucial to good parliamentary democracy.
Well, I think parliamentary TA has an enormously important role in supporting the knowledge base for policymaking. We have more and more very difficult, very complicated issues that policymaking has to deal with, which involve technology, science, very, very complicated. And a very important role for parliamentary TA is simply to set the scene, to analyze, to give information, to also give situations where you can have a good dialogue so that decision makers can learn from the dialogue, from the information, from the analysis, and from there they can take their decisions on a better ground.
What kind of big issues the next 5-10 years will we see in society that will involve technology where TA will be relevant?
I mean, obviously, energy is not going to go away, but I would say that because that's my specialisation. I think various aspects of individualised, personalised medicine, and it's going to be a question of the interface between the technology and the costs. The technology will be there, people will clamour for it, but governments will perhaps be horrified by the costs that might be involved. And this will link into other broader social trends like the ageing of Western societies. That's inevitable. Maybe, it's interesting that space research perhaps has not been on our agenda as much as it I've expected it to be in the past few years. But I think that might come back. I think we might see a reignition of the debate on manned space research versus robots. But various aspects, I think, of space research and applied space research. Use of derivation of minerals, for example, from asteroids and stuff like that.
Well, there are approximately 7 billion people in the world. Half those that are working make less than $2 a day. And so certainly in Europe or in the United States, we don't want to have to compete on wages, which means that we have to be innovative nations. And I think that's the real challenge, is being innovative so that our kids and grandkids are going to be able to work at higher technological levels and won't have to be competing on low wages.
They are major issues now. We are talking about energy. We are talking about sort of climate change. We are talking about food security. We're talking about water security, energy security. These are major issues which affect every one of our citizens. And unless you've got a good understanding of the science, an assessment of the technology of applying that science, you're actually not only defrauding your people when you're making political decisions, but you're actually defrauding yourself. And I mean defrauding in the true sense, because you're making a decision without the real information.
I think we can already see that long-term sustainability in very many areas of our society are very important challenges, which involves discussions about climate, discussion about the future of agriculture, of very important resources. This long-term sustainability will be very, very important. I also think that as a part of that, we already know that we will have big challenges from growing populations. So there is this whole complex about technology, long-term sustainability, keeping our welfare under these circumstances. And which will take new technology, new innovation. So I see a mess in the future of aims that needs to fit together. And that's something TA deals with, trying to take these complex matters and making a constructive dialogue about them. But long-term sustainability is definitely one of the very important things.
And there will always, it seems to me, be this sort of yin and yang between the development of particular information technologies and the privacy and personal freedom. That will never go away.